problem with Bitcoin has been that it's not easy to get, and the current ways of getting it are not consumer friendly. So let's say that we did an integration with Walmart, which has many point of sale devices. They can issue our vouchers after taking cash from their customers directly at the point of sale, in the same way that they can print other vouchers from other companies. And this is a very powerful way to scale Azteco, because it means we don't have to deliver any devices. We can be integrated with an unlimited number of outlets, wherever those outlets are, anywhere in the world. We don't have to, for example, deliver a huge ATM machine and put it in a corner somewhere and have it secured, have it regularly emptied of cash. All the cash handling problems are bundled in with the other cash handling problems that the retailer already has to experience. And so there's no friction to becoming an Azteco vendor when you use our API. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote it. But if you think more deeply about Bitcoin, that it's not actually money, it's just a database, that frees you to create new business models and new software methods that have nothing to do with the handling of money. And that's what Azteco does.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, this meeting is being recorded. And here I am with a very special person today. This is long overdue, from an amazing company that I've had the pleasure of working with for a while now. Okay, this is Mr. Akin Fernandez from Azteco. Okay, some people may know him from his online world, okay, where he is beauty on, and I encourage you to read some of his wonderful writings here on Medium, some of his fantastic posts. But I'm with him today because we are investing again in Azteco, because we believe that they are an incredibly important company that is spreading Bitcoin to everyone, right? It is Bitcoin for everyone. It is inclusive. And we are going to chat today about his business, what he's built. We have a good amount of questions here from our Lightning Ventures syndicate. And Akin is absolutely the most hardcore person that I have ever met. He is so politically on the right side of Bitcoin, okay? You cannot mention nonsense like stable coins to him. You cannot mention kind of all of these ridiculous, he doesn't even like the term Bitcoin maximalism. He doesn't even like any of that stuff. It's all nonsense to him. He's doing very serious work, okay, spreading Bitcoin. And we have a lot of fun going back and forth. I consider him a friend at this point. He was here in Miami. Some people were lucky enough to meet him in person. He kept a rather low profile, but I'm thrilled to dive in today with Azteco and hang with him. So, Akin, how are you?
I'm very well, Mike, and thank you for that glowing introduction.
So we're ready to have a chat. So let's start with Azteco is not a new company. Azteco has been around for quite a while. So why was it that you first decided to start Azteco? What is the meaning behind the name Azteco? Where did that come from? And what was the origin of this?
Well, the origin of the name Azteco came from the launch of the .co TLD, top level domain. And back before I started writing the software for Azteco, I needed a domain to host everything under. And I had a couple of these .co domains, and I decided to use the azte.co domain. And that's the origin of it. And it was quite fortuitous, actually, because most of the companies in quote unquote the space have bit or Bitcoin or something to do with bit in their name or that the domain, and we don't have that, and that further differentiates us from other companies. So I'm quite happy that set of circumstances ended up giving us the name Azteco.
Okay, cool. So what was the original idea? Why did you decide to start this company?
I decided to start this company because I've been waiting for something like Bitcoin since the 1990s. And having had an interest in the problem of fiat money before many people had even known it was a problem, I saw that this could be a solution to this problem. Before that, I had worked on an idea to use Xiaomi and eCash as a way to replace the dollar. But that was that was before the consumer internet as we know it was a real thing, and the Xiaomi and eCash wasn't up to the task, and the company that made it basically went out of business. So when Bitcoin arrived, I immediately saw that it was what I've been waiting for, what I felt was inevitable, but couldn't quite see the shape of. Having used BitTorrent, Nutella, Napster, and all these other tools to share files, it was in my mind obvious that something like this that had clients that didn't rely on a central server and had a fixed money supply circulating between these nodes, that it could simulate money successfully and that it wouldn't be stoppable either. And because anybody can download this client and then write software against its API, that means you could write basically any service you can imagine on top of it. So I started writing Azteco against the API that Bitcoin D actually provides. And I had to get some Bitcoin to start doing experiments with. So Amir Taki had a company called Intersango, and I bought my first Bitcoin from him. Now, to buy Bitcoin from Intersango, you had to send a bank transfer to him, alert him that you've done it, and send him the Bitcoin address that you want that Bitcoin to be sent to after the bank transfer cleared. Well, it all worked perfectly. And in 3 days, I got the Bitcoin for the 71 pounds that I sent to Amir Taki. Now, waiting 3 days for somebody to write an entry in a database for you is completely insane. So I immediately realized that there has to be a better way of delivering Bitcoin to anybody who wants it. And because I have a background that touches the third world, I know that most of those people don't have telephone accounts. They top up their telephones ad hoc as required. And so if I could put these two ideas together, then we could have a delivery system for Bitcoin that would work across the entire world. It would be instantaneous, and that you could go into a local corner shop or something like that, pay over your money and get a voucher that you could redeem straight into your wallet. And that's the genesis of the Azteco idea. And it took 4 iterations to get to something that was good enough to show to the public. And that's when it really started. I hired a store in central London to show it off. And all the vouchers that we issued during this pop-up where we were testing the software, it all worked perfectly. And it was obviously a goer. What had to catch up was the public and the public's understanding of what Bitcoin is, why it's so important, how useful it can be, and everything else. But interestingly, during that pop-up, which was in Goldstone Street in central London, blockchain.info was taken off of the Apple App Store. I can't remember the exact reason why they did that, but at the very time that we had launched to test this system, Apple decided to kill blockchain.info. And I couldn't therefore tell people who came into the store, get this blockchain.info app, take this voucher, redeem it, and you'll see in about 30 seconds, you'll get this Bitcoin on your account. So it caused us a lot of trouble. And that was a foretaste of the sorts of things that are going to happen as people wake up to the things about Bitcoin that they don't like and try and stop it. But that's the origin story for Bitcoin in short form. Well, it's enough for Bitcoin for Azteco in short form.
So a lot was said there. First off, I haven't heard Amir Taki in a while. Boy, that's an old name too. Um, so what year was this when this was starting? Is this the 2018 when you first really kind of when did Azteco incorporate? When did you do this pop-up demo?
I did this pop-up demo, I think it was in 2013, if I remember correctly, sometime around there. And that was after I did my first mention of Bitcoin in a blog post, which was 2010. So it had taken me 3 years to get everything to a state where I could confidently put it in front of the public for testing. And I was writing all the software myself. And there are many different architectural choices that have to be made and other kinds of choices. So it's a very, very difficult task. But I managed to pull it off. And now that we have Paul Ferguson on the team, he's an ex-Google guy, and he's brought that Google level thinking and professionalism to how the software works. And so it's gone beyond my wildest dreams in the back end. It's absolutely superb. So we have a platform that not only works very well, but it's a Google quality software, and it will scale and it will serve all the people that we want it to serve, which is growing every day.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about when you met Mr. Paul Ferguson, who is a little early in California right now, which is where he is. When did you actually meet him, and when did he leave Google to be an ex-Googler and officially join the team?
It was about 2 years ago that I received an email from him asking about what we're doing. And he had apparently been looking at different companies that he wanted to join. He is a hardcore Bitcoiner who has, dug deep into all the aspects of it and decided he wanted to spend the next part of his career working exclusively on Bitcoin. And he was looking for companies to possibly work for, and he came across us, and he sent me an email, and then we had a couple of emails back and forth, and then one thing led to another, and he became a co-founder. And it was one of the best things to happen to us, because he really is absolutely superb. And it is him who's responsible for the software that runs the Orange terminal that you have there. And I'll never forget the testing that he was doing to make this Orange terminal happen. And it's not an easy thing. It's a tour de force, like many aspects of Azteco, tour de force of different software techniques that are very, very tricky. And so that's how that happened. I was quite surprised that somebody from a company like Google would come and join us at such an early stage in our development. The product back then the service was kind of had rough edges. But I think if you've got an imagination and you understand what Bitcoin is going to do for the world, you would be able to see that a project like this has the potential of being very, very important. And anybody who's familiar with the early days of the internet and the way that Lycos, Magellan, Hotbot, and all of those other search engines used to look, they bear no relation to the modern search engines, but the analogy is the same. Azteco in its state now is analogous to the early Lycos, Magellan, and all those other search engines. And in the future, it's going to be, and actually is, a super refined, super efficient service.
Okay. So, both co-founders, both Akin and Paul, are technical individuals. They are hardcore Bitcoiners. Akin is from the old school, the early days of Bitcoin, certainly earlier than and I thought I was a pretty old school Bitcoiner. They are both talented software developers, and they are both technical individuals, which is something that angel investors look for in founders, by the way. Just a little tip on angel investing. Is there one co-founder or two? are two co-founders better than one? Usually. And if both co-founders are technical co-founders, that is technically the best that you can invest in as an angel investor. But that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about right now is the current state of where Azteco's at. Now, the pins on the map keep growing every day. Okay. So this is a global company. And if you could just in a 30,000 foot overview and in 2 minutes, could you just give an overview on exactly how Azteco works and what it is as a business for anyone who may not know?
Well, Azteco works in exactly the same way that a mobile top-up for mobile phones work globally. Most of the people on Earth who use mobile phones don't have an account linked to their bank where they pay monthly. They pay in advance by buying airtime with vouchers. And these vouchers are available from wooden shacks in the middle of nowhere to supermarkets all over the world. And that's how most people use mobile phones. So this model superimposed on Bitcoin would mean that people who have Satoshi, Pine Wallet, and all these other wallets, Blue Wallet, they could top up their mobile phones with an Azteco voucher and then get the equivalent of airtime in those wallets. And that would allow them to send Bitcoin to other users, to pay for things online, and do anything you can do with Bitcoin from your mobile phone. The problem with Bitcoin has been that it's not easy to get. And the current ways of getting it are not consumer friendly. They're actually anti-consumer and super difficult. So if we remove all the complexity from getting Bitcoin by issuing a simple piece of paper, like that one there, from an orange terminal of the kind that you have, or any point of sale device that's in a supermarket, till, or anything like that, then we remove all the barriers to getting small amounts of Bitcoin. And that's the very, very super high level view of how Azteco works. Now, in a country like, say, Brazil, where we've just rolled out 200,000 outlets, most of the people there don't have phone accounts. They pay monthly. They're very used to topping up their phones. They're very used to vouchers and all sorts of other pay-as-you-go services. And so Azteco fits right in with that culture. There's nothing for them to understand. There's no book for them to have to read. It's all very straightforward. And it will become obvious to them instantaneously that if they have one of these Bitcoin wallets on their phone, not only can they send money to any website or any person anywhere over the world, but they can also receive money. And when they understand they can receive Bitcoin, which in this use case is money, they will be able to receive money without having to go to Rio, Western Union, or any other of these services. And also, because Lightning has super low fees, all of the problems associated with the fees of Western Union and all these other services is eliminated. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to show any ID. You don't have to do anything like that. It's all just like WhatsApp, only instead of receiving a message or a picture, you receive a synthetic money that you can use in any context. This is an extremely powerful idea. It's a sea change in how people will do things worldwide. And the demographic that it is suited for, which is all of the unbanked, people in third world countries, people who don't want to spend a lot of their money on fees and stuff like that. This service combined with Bitcoin is the absolutely perfect fit. The problem that we've had is getting the distribution and also the barriers of understanding, where people tend to not understand what Bitcoin actually is. And that goes for not only the so-called quote unquote regulators, but ordinary people and business people who don't understand what Bitcoin is. And You can excuse them for not having this understanding because there's been a lot of misinformation published about what Bitcoin is, and that's very problematic. But as I see, as you're zooming into South Africa, there are a lot of people in South Africa for whom Bitcoin delivered by Azteco is going to be a very, very powerful tool.
So let's talk about the different integrations and what's happened so far. Right now, we have the regular terminal here, which I love to show up and fire off some vouchers for demos. It's super fun. We can fire off one here too. The shopkeep, the individual merchant, the paper is not actually necessary, right? People always ask, or at least they've asked me many times, why is the receipt necessary? I think the receipt is fun. I think it's a great way as a gift. People don't always instantly redeem vouchers on the spot, but really any sort of smart connected device can issue vouchers digitally right there on the spot and be redeemed. So we're going to talk about redeeming through the Azteco site and redeeming through mobile. And we're going to talk about Lightning and on-chain, which Azteco offers both. But let's first go into the big part of this business, which is really the APIs. Okay, the API vendors. So the shopkeep on the corner in the middle of nowhere who might be selling Bitcoin. How exactly does the API business work, and why is that really the big picture for Azteco in the future?
So you just asked about the API. The API allows businesses all over the world to integrate with Azteco and then output our vouchers through their point of sale device, the point of sale devices that they already have. So let's say that we did an integration with Walmart, which has many point of sale devices. They can issue our vouchers after taking cash from their customers directly at the point of sale in the same way that they can print other vouchers from other companies. And this is a very powerful way to scale Azteco because it means we don't have to deliver any devices. We can be integrated with an unlimited number of outlets, wherever those outlets are anywhere in the world. We don't have to, for example, deliver a huge ATM machine and put it in a corner somewhere and have it secured, have it regularly emptied of cash. All the cash handling problems are bundled in with the other cash handling problems that the retailer already has to experience. And so there's no friction to becoming an Azteco vendor when you use our API. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote it. It's super simple to, in terms of programming, to use. There's not very many endpoint calls to be made, and it works very, very well. And our biggest vendors now are all API vendors. And I think you're right about the way that the handheld terminal works. It is nice to have a piece of paper in your hand. It helps people understand the process of redeeming the voucher and everything else. But the API vendor can also output a piece of paper like this. And instead of saying Azteco on the top, it says Walmart. So in the end, the API vendor does, in fact, have the opportunity to output a piece of paper. Although some of our vendors are choosing to show a QR code directly on the point of sale device that the store uses. So the shopkeeper will have a screen where the QR code that encapsulates the LN URL is displayed, and then the person who is buying the voucher will scan directly from the point of sale device instead of having a piece of paper given to him printed out from the thermal printer. So because we're dealing only with data, how an Azteco voucher is displayed or consumed is very, very flexible because it's just data. It's up to the imagination of our API users how they integrate the API endpoints into their flows. One thing that is common to all of it, though, is that we make a percentage on every single voucher that's sold, whether it's printed out or whether it's a pure digital only play.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's address the ATM comparison, right? That's the first thing that everyone goes to when they hear about Azteco is they think this directly competes with ATMs. That's a fair assumption because it is rather similar. You touched briefly on some of the benefits, but in terms of comparing your business with disrupting or improving on the legacy ATM business, in your own words, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the legacy ATM business exists because something physical has to be delivered when you're talking about cash. When you have a bank card and you want to withdraw cash from a machine, obviously you have to be physically in front of the machine, and then you have to put your card in, the PIN code and everything else, and then cash money comes out. Now, in the fiat world, that makes perfect sense. And the reason why ATMs first came into being because the banks weren't 24 hours, and by simply putting this interface half outside and half inside of the bank, you can give customers access to cash to do anything they want at any time of the day. Well, in a world where everything is digital, including the money, there's no reason to have a physical ATM. And the idea that Bitcoin is money is what has caused these Bitcoin ATMs to come into being. People think it's money. And so where do you go to get money? You go to an ATM. So let's take the word Bitcoin and put it in front of ATM, make a Bitcoin ATM, and then we can sell a lot of Bitcoin. And of course, that's a logical way of thinking about it. But if you think more deeply about Bitcoin, that it's not actually money, it's just a database, that frees you to create new business models and new software methods that have nothing to do with the handling of money. And that's what Azteco does. We've understand that Bitcoin is not in fact money, it's just a database. And on that basis, we can remove every kind of thought process that has to do with the legacy banking world, ATMs, and everything else, and produce a service that is true to Bitcoin's nature, where we're just moving data around on a network that doesn't have anything to do with anything physical. The pieces of paper that we output are vestigial. They are like the appendix. They're like something that is there just to remind you that you've bought something. There's no requirement for this at all. We could devise a system where paper is absolutely removed. And in fact, one of our vendors called Zozoday is selling our vouchers out of India, and they don't do any printing of any kind at all. It's all totally online. So that's the sort of that's a picture of the changes that Bitcoin brings to the market. If you think about it correctly, it can change the way you handle money, think about money, deliver services, and everything else. If you have one foot in the fiat world and one foot in the Bitcoin world, you get ATMs as the bastard child of this having 2 feet in one in each world. ATMs are not required to deliver Bitcoin. And I think the worst aspect of them is that they reinforce the false idea that Bitcoin is a financial service and that the same rules that govern ATMs and the companies that run ATMs should also apply to people who are selling Bitcoin, which of course is not true. And Azteco's existence proves that by dint of us not having this infrastructure that had to be manufactured, it's hugely expensive, has to be delivered everywhere. We are able to roll out 500,000 outlets without having to manufacture a single thing. It's all software all the way down. And we wouldn't have been able to get that many outlets and have the global reach that we've achieved if we had a factory manufacturing ATMs. And so we're much more agile, much without as much friction. We are frictionless in our delivery of our service, And that's how we're able to spread very, very quickly. All we have to do is agree with the companies that are going to integrate with us. And then all of a sudden, a switch is turned, and then we have tens of thousands of more outlets. So imagine if we were an ATM manufacturer and we wanted to put our service into a company that had 1,700 outlets. That would be 1,700 ATMs that we'd have to manufacture painstakingly. And then even if we were to do that, deliver them, find the money to create these ATMs in advance, when these machines are delivered, they are a maintenance nightmare. They're going to break down. They're going to be robbed. They're going to have all kinds of problems. And with software, whilst there are problems, they are soluble from one place, because the server that runs these networks is in one place, in fact. So it's very important to understand that this transformation of what money is into something that's purely digital actually means that the sensible people are throwing away everything to do with the old fiat system, every part of the thinking to do with it. And that's the only way we're going to reach the entire world with Bitcoin in a rapid way, a frictionless way, and a way that's true to Bitcoin and beneficial to the market. And so that's my thinking on ATMs. It looks like a nice idea, but in the end, it makes things worse, not better.
Not only that, but the Azteco fee model, which we're going to get into here in a second, is much more affordable for the end user than the ATM. In fact, every single ATM experience I have ever had is at least an 8% commission, at least. And the price quoted to me, one time I was with my friend right here in sunny South Florida, and the price on the ATM was $9,000 higher than the true spot price from an exchange.
Yeah.
Okay,
and because they have control of the back end, they can make money by misquoting the price of Bitcoin. Or of course, there is no official price of Bitcoin, but they can, for all intents and purposes, misquote it. And on top of it, they can charge a higher percentage fee. Now, there's another aspect of this where if you own a store and you want to start selling Bitcoin, you've got to make a huge cash layout for the Bitcoin ATM. With Azteco, that's not true. With Azteco, you can use the equipment you already have and start selling Bitcoin immediately. So that's the other aspect of this that makes Azteco vastly superior to any ATM. It's less expensive for the user, and for the owner of the shop, it's less expensive to get started.
Yes, it absolutely is, and I've seen ATMs up to actually 18% in commissions that were being charged on them. And not only that, the ATM experience usually requires that I pull out some sort of government ID, actually scan it in before everything's processed. And we don't have to deal with any of those things with Azteco vendors. So you heard it here first. Bitcoin is not money. It's actually a database. I would love to spend an hour just talking about that alone. Okay, so let's talk about the first big API vendors, the first couple of big rollouts before we go to the 200,000 and all the exciting things that are coming, right? What started? Now, I remember the first big news was Poundland. Which I had never heard of, being American, but Poundland is basically the equivalent of the US dollar store in the UK, and they integrated with Azteco. So those type of integrations, right? How does that work? Somebody goes up to the register and they say, I want an Azteco voucher. Now, is that the same type of deal that's next to maybe a Red Lobster or Circle K or Target or whatever those stores are? Is that the same deal? Is that on the same system, or is that built into their computer? How does that voucher come out when somebody does a big rollout?
What the rollouts that we've done work in the following manner. We contract with a distributor, and then that distributor makes our vouchers available to the point of sale devices of all the companies where they have some kind of coverage. Now, Poundland is an example of that, where we integrate with a company and they have a relationship with Poundland for many different kinds of voucher products. And we're just one of those voucher products. So you can get your phone topped up or anything else. And that's how we did that. Now, Poundland went offline because there's, as you know, a large amount of hysteria about this database called Bitcoin. And it's very problematic. But Poundland is amenable to being turned back on because the climate surrounding Bitcoin is changing very, very rapidly. So we have the opportunity to turn that back on, but there's some business process details that we have to work out before we do that. But I'm going to reveal something to you now, which is we're very excited about. There's a company in the UK called Payzone, and this company has 28,000 outlets throughout the United Kingdom, and we're about to integrate with them so that you can go to any one of 28,000 Payzones, buy a £100 voucher, and then redeem it immediately. So this means that there will not be a single place in the United Kingdom where you cannot buy an Azteco voucher. This is a very, very, very significant step for us, and it will push us a long way forwards to being the ubiquitous way that people buy Bitcoin. It's super, super, super exciting. Payzone is a household name here. It's absolutely everywhere. We have coverage from Land's End to John O'Groats. And so this is going to accelerate the normalization of Bitcoin, which is another one of our aims. Bitcoin must be totally normalized. It must be as normal as drinking tap water. Not that you should do that. But this is exactly what we need to do. We need to make Bitcoin totally normal in the same way that getting an Uber is normal now. If this doesn't happen, it will be an adversarial relationship between Bitcoin users and everybody else in perpetuity. And we cannot live like that. We cannot do that. And Bitcoin's promise will not be fulfilled. And I think it's important to point out that one of the promises that Bitcoin makes to everybody is the elimination of payer fraud. Anybody who's used a credit card online and have had a phone call from their bank or card saying, were you in such and such place buying a bottle of vodka? Said, no, I'm in Jamaica right now. So this kind of thing happens all the time, and then you have to have the charges reversed, et cetera, et cetera. With Bitcoin, all of this goes away. Payer fraud is eliminated. And this means, too, that people from the so-called third world can shop on first world websites for the first time without the possibility of payer fraud. Now, people in India have credit cards. Millions and millions of them do. But apparently, 60% of all credit card purchases that have come from India, if the card's being used in a US e-commerce site, they get rejected simply because the card's from India. That's completely insane. With Bitcoin, that goes away. The Bitcoin network doesn't care what country you're from. It just works. And so somebody in Bitcoin can spend $10 on something from the United States, and the payment is guaranteed to go through. Just for this alone, Bitcoin should be adopted by every single person who wants to spend money online for any reason. Just for this alone, because it means that the huge amount of waste from fraudulent transactions is completely eliminated. So Bitcoin brings many things to the market. Some of them are hard to see, some of them easy to see. The easy ones to see are the extreme convenience of it. But across the board, Bitcoin is a good thing. And I think this is something we have to trumpet. We have to keep talking about it until the normies start to get it. And part of that means putting it in their hands in a way that they can quickly and easily get a hold of it and use it, and then they will get orange pilled, as they like to say.
Okay, so before we start talking about the alternative cases that people can use Azteco vouchers, right, in different integrations with points and surveys and employer recognitions and all of those things that I think are really exciting, I definitely want to touch on those. Let's talk real quick about something that is fairly new, and that is this pay in person. This pay in person cash with Azteco. Buy Azteco with cash in person. It says beta here. Can you talk about how this works?
Sure. Well, let's take the case of Canada. You can go to any one of the 6,000 Canada Post offices with 100 Canadian dollars, and then you can get an Azteco voucher. Now, the way it works is that you have to fill out that form that we were just on, and then you get sent a barcode. You go with that barcode on your phone to a Canada Post office, they scan it, and then you pay them the $100. And then as soon as you've paid, they tell us, and then we email you the voucher to the email address that you've given us. And then you scan the voucher, and then you're done. It's super simple, it's super quick, and it's widely available in Canada, very widely available. So this is about to be turned on in the next 48 hours, I've been told. And when it turns on, that means that Canadians will be in a country where Bitcoin is trivially easy to obtain. And I can't understate how important and how fantastic this integration is, because we remove all of the complexity, all of the mystique around Bitcoin. It's all washed away forever. And what you're left with is the pristine Bitcoin experience where you get Bitcoin on its own terms, and you can then do things with that Bitcoin just like it was an SMS or a WhatsApp message or anything else. This is very important also, that the mystique and so-called Bitcoin culture must go away if we're going to bring billions of people into Bitcoin, most of whom don't care anything about any of the culture. They just want to get things done. And because Bitcoin allows them to get things done in a far more efficient and cost-effective way, it's perfect for the consumer. So in order to get it to them, we have to go to them with a proposition that they can accept, and not with anything that's nothing to do with the actual proposition, which is if you use Bitcoin, you'll be better off.
So, and that's a huge amount of pins in Canada. I mean, my gosh, that is a ton. I mean, that covers a big chunk of Canada. Wow. I don't want to hear any excuses from anyone that you can't get close to an Azteco vendor here, because there's a ton of these. But it looks like these are all different now. One is a drugstore, and one is, you said there's some post offices. So how does that work? Look, I am Infinite, whatever that is, right? Maybe that's some kind of a store. So these are all how does that work? They're not all the same store. It's not all Walgreens. It's not all Shoppers Drug Mart.
No, in the UK and Canada, you can have a post office that's inside of a store. About 20 minutes from where I live, there's a small store that sells magazines, cakes, and all this other stuff. But there's a sectioned off area that is actually a post office inside this person's store. And the shopkeeper, when you want to post something, basically puts on his postman hat, his post office hat, goes behind the counter, pretends to be a postman, takes your letter, and puts it in the mail bag. And then after he's done that, he takes his hat off, and he's not the postman anymore. And he comes out, and it's business as usual. So I think in Canada, that's what you're seeing. These stores that look like just convenience stores are actually serve two purposes. They're post offices and stores as well. So that's why you're getting those.
So then somebody fills this out, they put in their email address, Lightning or on-chain, they go to that store, they pay, and they redeem right there.
Exactly right. They get a barcode sent to their email, and that email is scanned at the post office. and it says, okay, you have to pay $10. Here's your $10. And then when it's paid, the till in the post office will alert us that it's been paid, and then we issue the voucher.
So those redemption options, just real quick. Now, people can redeem an on-chain voucher on your site, right, by plugging in the 16-digit number and sending it to any wallet of their choice. And that fee is included in the original purchase.
That's exactly right. Now, all of these outlets you're seeing in Canada, they are all Lightning. They issued Lightning vouchers through them. Actually, that's not true, because the form allows you to choose one or the other. But they are, some of our integrations are Lightning only, and we believe that Lightning is the future of consumer Bitcoin because of these super low fees and the instantaneous reception of the message that your entry has been written to the chain of blocks. So we think Lightning is going to be the way things go, and the layer one is going to be for other use cases, not consumer use cases of small amounts of money.
So let's talk real quick about some of the other awesome use cases that there are for Azteco. This has been pretty exciting to see these grow. So things like Buffle, things like Winwalk, these type of integrations. This is anywhere where you would have points, right? Anywhere in the world that you can earn points from, shopping, credit cards, walking, whatever you're doing to earn points, and then you cash them out into, say, an employee. An Amazon gift card or one of these store cards, okay, which includes the employee recognition category, which is a massively growing market of, Lucy did a great job at work, and, Tom worked with Lucy, and Tom gives Lucy 50 gold stars within the company sort of recognition. And then she saves up those stars and withdraws them for whatever normie gift card would be on the market, right? This is a big space that's growing in corporate America, and there's all sorts of data about why this works, right? So Azteco infiltrating these type of markets, right, where I can walk X amount of steps and I earn these points, and eventually it's $5 worth of a gift card, to be able to withdraw them for an Azteco gift card, which is Bitcoin, which is not money, but merely a database. Can you talk about some of these other partnerships and how this has gone so far and kind of where you're at with this?
Sure. The one, Winwalk, which is the first one you talked about, which is actually there it is there. That's a very interesting app. It has over 1 million installs. And what it does, it pays you. Please don't ask me how it works, but it pays you for walking. You have this app, it has a pedometer in it, and the more you walk, you earn points inside Winwalk. And when you reach a certain threshold, you can redeem the points you've accumulated by simply walking for gift cards. Now, if you can get an Amazon gift card just for walking, or an Azteco voucher just for walking, which one are you going to choose? You're going to choose an Azteco voucher because you can spend that synthetic money anywhere on the internet. So these sorts of integrations, because we don't think about Bitcoin in a wrong way, we think about Bitcoin in a correct way, allows us to make these integrations and for our imaginations to run wild and put Bitcoin into these contexts which other people would never even dream of accessing. And this is similar to similar ideas in the Buffle and if you scroll up, let me just go back again, scroll up. Buffle, and there's just so many these days, and it's really hard to keep up with it all. So there was one, the Hoorah, that's it. It's Hoorah's the other one, and scroll up again. Hoorah's the other one, and there's another one where. There you go. There you go. That's it. That's perfectly there. Madai and Buffle. Now, these are two other companies that have rewarding systems where the reward is normally a gift card for one of the companies that everybody's familiar with. But with Bitcoin through Azteco, they have essentially a universal gift card, which can be spent anywhere that accepts Bitcoin. And that's another way of looking at it. It's a universal gift card, what Azteco is offering to people and companies. And one of the very interesting integrations that we've just completed is with the company Tillo. This Tillo company is an API aggregator. So they expose the Tillo API to hundreds of partners. Actually, it's 100 plus partners. And on the other end is the Azteco API. So this Tillo aggregator gives these very large companies the ability to access the API through Tillo. And to our great surprise and pleasure, we found that Tillo is starting to do a lot of business. And we haven't even got close to half of the partners at Tillo integrating with Tillo's API that touches us. So this is another area, another integration where we're seeing large volumes starting to develop, because our gift card in this context is better than any other gift card on the market, because it's universal, it's flexible, and it gives people the ability to do many more things than they can do with a simple Netflix card or Steam or anything like that. So people are starting to wake up to how powerful this idea is. And when I say this idea, I mean the idea of Bitcoin. And it was essential to put Bitcoin into these contexts, into these various disparate contexts, so that they can relate to it from their own perspective. I think that's what's been missing from a lot of other companies who are trying to get into the Bitcoin game. If you have to look at it from other people's point of view. What would Bitcoin be useful for a Tillo company? What would Bitcoin be useful for Windwalk? And our sales executive, Tom Doubles, has been absolutely brilliant at recontextualizing the Azteco service for these different kinds of companies. And it's very important for us to get these different kind of companies on board, because we're showing that what people believe Bitcoin is actually not what it actually is. The first crop of businessmen who have tried to do something with Bitcoin have been the people who manufacture ATMs, the fintech people, people involved in that sort of thing, because they believe that Bitcoin is money. But because it's just a database, Tillo can think of Bitcoin as another kind of gift card database that they can integrate with. Windwalk can think of it as a reward for doing walking. So when you understand that Bitcoin actually doesn't have a fixed nature, it just has a bunch of capabilities, and you can superimpose any idea you want onto it, the number of business models you can apply to it all of a sudden explodes. And beneath all of it, you're going to have a company that has the ability to deliver the Bitcoin as required on demand. And that's what Azteco does. We facilitate all of these companies, whatever their business model is, and allow them to access the Bitcoin network and then deliver it to their users.
Azteco is consumer Bitcoin. Azteco is for everyone. Okay, so first things first, let's just fire off a voucher for fun. This is the Soon Me terminal. This is the typical Azteco setup here. All right, I'm just going to hit issue voucher. Okay, Akin comes into my store. He wants to top up his mobile phone, maybe save fees on remittances globally, or maybe he wants to give a present to his nephew who may be graduating, or whatever the reason
or maybe
is.
I want to donate one single pound to charity. Let's do that. So I'm going to pass this pound to you through the screen to Muz, and there it is. You can assume you have that pound.
Okay, so we have the option to sell on chain or with Lightning, right? Let's choose Lightning, and let's issue a one. Well, I don't know the exchange rate on the pound. you know what? Let's give someone a reason to scan it. Let's do a $5 lightning voucher. Okay, this is a $5 lightning voucher, and that is, and you see the details there, which I don't know if you can see it, but actually, let me print it out here. So I'm going to hit complete sale. Someone just handed me $5 in my store. This, like magic, can either be scanned right here or printed. And just like that, we have a receipt. So it is quite lovely, isn't it? So that's a thermal printer as well. So there is no 16 digits here because this is a lightning voucher. So this must be scanned through one of the many integrations that Azteco has. Last I checked, there was at least 18 wallets that you could scan this with. So I'm not going to scan it, but what do we see here? We see we have $4.75 worth of Bitcoin, and there was a 25-cent commission on this sale. Okay. And that is 5%. That is a 25-cent commission, which is then split between Azteco and the merchant. So that is that. So I'm going to hold that up. Whoever scans this darn thing, there you go. There's $4.75 worth of Bitcoin for you. Okay, so that is a voucher and how it works. Now, I didn't have to print that. I could have done that on my phone. And once you're onboarded as an Azteco merchant, you can create sub vendors, which is really how you make money. Now, if I was a ambitious young fellow, which I'm not because I'm old, I would go out and I would sign up 10 to 20 people that were also ambitious people, and we would have them selling from their phone to wherever, maybe at their stores. I might sign up a small chain, right, of maybe a dozen gas stations or independent shops. It would be one integration, okay, and that's going to be 12 pins on Azteco's ever-growing map of retailers, okay, and that is really how you multiply your income. And we're very excited because Gary Leland at BitBlock Boom is going to be offering vouchers for sale there and signing up people. He's taken an interest in Azteco as a hobbyist, and we're going to see what happens there. Okay, so let's do a lightning round full of these questions, okay? You know, this is like Barbara Walters back in the day. We're known for asking the tough questions here. Okay. You know, these are unedited, okay? I'm reading what comes in, all right? The first one is, how does Azteco defend the fees charged for vouchers in the future, and what is their moat? Now, I didn't edit these. I'm just reading them to you as they come in. Feel free to.
How do we defend the fees that we charge? Well, first of all, this question can be taken in two ways. I'll take it in the philosophical way so that I get to spout off. We are capitalists. We are an American company. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. Making a profit is a good thing. It's good for us. It's good for the users. It's good for everybody. And if and when we grow to have 20 million outlets all over the world, we might consider lowering the percentage that we charge because we want to maintain our pole position in the market. But that's a purely commercial survival decision, and it's nothing to do with the ethics of making a profit. Making a profit is a good thing. And if you're a libertarian, you will understand that laws that prevent people from charging whatever they want for the goods and services they provide, those are illegitimate. So I reject questions like that as they're asked as illegitimate on its face. It's very important that the free market be allowed to do its magic and fulfill everybody's needs. And anybody who calls themselves a Bitcoiner and who thinks that there should be price controls, that people are charging quote unquote too much for a service, they're not real Bitcoiners, and they're not going to like the world that Bitcoin is going to midwife into existence. There's not going to be anybody there to control prices for you in that future, which is just around the corner. So you had better go and read some Murray Rothbard to understand what Bitcoin is really going to do. It's a very serious subject. And like you were saying before, Mike, you had actually used a Bitcoin ATM and the charges were enormous. Well, look what's happened. The free market has engineered a solution to this problem in the form of Azteco, which is cheaper than a Bitcoin ATM. So if you don't want to pay high charges, you now have a choice. You can go to one of the 6,000 outlets in Canada, if you're in Canada, and use Azteco rather than a Bitcoin ATM, or you can go to one of the 200,000 outlets we have in Brazil opening up soon and use one of those instead of an ATM. That's how the market works. And then the market actors have to respond by changing their models so that they can become competitive. And guess what? The consumer is the winner, because as businesses fight for the consumer by lowering their prices, the consumer gets a better product at a lower price. That's the way it works. That's the world that Bitcoin is going to make the default, and it's going to be very good. Don't be frightened of it. You'll love it.
Okay, 200,000 outlets. I can't even imagine what 200,000 outlets. My plebeian brain can't understand that. Okay, so here's a question. Since Azteco's seed round, there were some spikes and some volatility in the Azteco volume. Now, this is due to one vendor who had come online and then went offline. And the question is, can you explain with the customer or your vendor who paused? And we're very pleased to report that Azteco is on track to have their 6th best month ever. There's still a few days left in this month, and their volume is definitely trending higher. But can you explain what exactly happened with that drop in volume a few months ago?
Yes. Now, our vendors are operating in environments where sometimes they get asked to stop doing what they're doing. For example, Poundland had, we believe, one employee there that didn't like the shape of what Azteco is doing and caused that to be paused. So that's the reason why you'll see a graph like that. There's many reasons why a vendor will stop selling for a while and then suddenly come back on. This particular vendor is one of our biggest vendors. He's done millions of dollars with us, and he has recently expanded his back-end infrastructure to take on what he believes is going to be a huge increase in the number of vouchers he's going to be issuing. He has global reach with his network of retailers, and it's not a linear, straightforward thing that he's trying to do. There are road bumps, there are interruptions, and we can expect more of this. This is why we're pushing as hard as we can to, for want of a better word, diversify the number of vendors that we have, so that a spike like this will look much smaller over the whole graph. Tillo, once again, is another example. They've just started to do increasing amounts of volume that have actually surprised us. And so in the next coming months, you're going to see another spike, this time with the volumes coming exclusively from Tillo, which will mean that we'll have two high-performing vendors flattening out that curve and making the bumps less pronounced. So that's the story of that big burst. We were very excited during that burst because it looked like this vendor is going to do spectacular amounts of money, and he actually did. But it had to stop because of the issues he had with some of the outlets where he was selling our vouchers. But he's come back on now, and so we can expect, I'm sure, more of these sorts of outages. Recently, we've been trying to enter the Nigerian market. It's a notoriously tough market to enter. We had a couple of test runs down there that showed that the demand there for our service is very strong. But once again, we have opposition from the state there, which is something we have to overcome. Now, the El Salvador government has put on a training program for the central bank staffers from 44 different countries, and Nigeria is one of the countries that attended. Hopefully, out of that meeting, they've taken away a better understanding of what Bitcoin is and how it can be helpful to the people in that very great country. And we'll be able to work there without the threat of having bank accounts closed down and everything else. In the model where we integrate with third-party distributors, those third-party distributors are subject to the laws of the jurisdictions where they're operating. And so if they're seen to be distributing what they imagine is a Bitcoin voucher, then they are obviously very frightened that they'll have their bank accounts closed and their other businesses disturbed. So it's very understandable that people are nervous, people in business that is, are nervous about integrating and selling Bitcoin products and products that have the name Bitcoin associated with them. But this is getting much better. It's much better than it was 5 years ago. More people are beginning to understand that Bitcoin is innocuous and entirely beneficial. And so we're going to see less and less of the spikes like that spike we've seen in that diagram.
All right. Very good. All right, moving on. For Azteco, what unique regulatory risks exist in each key global market? Examples being limitations on voucher minimums and maximums, limitations on redemption timeframes, and do you foresee Azteco having to operationally differentiate to mitigate these, if any, risks in each individual market? Examples, Africa versus EU, Latin America versus North America, etc. Are there different sort of laws in each country, and do you have to be nimble to adapt to them?
Yes, there are different laws in different countries, and we do have to be nimble. I think it's helpful for us being distributed by other companies, some of them very large, because their legal teams are able to explain our context to the regulators so that we get the sign off to be able to operate. This has just happened in Canada, by the way. So it's very important when we start talking about this to understand precisely what Bitcoin is and what Azteco is doing with Bitcoin. What we're doing is no different to an iTunes gift card, Amazon gift card, Steam, Netflix, you name it. And in that context, we are under the same regulations as all other gift cards. The fact that the word Bitcoin is associated with it doesn't have anything to do with the physical, actual process that we're engaged in. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners, well, first of all, they're too concerned about these legal matters because it's not really helpful to anybody. But when you understand what we're doing and what Bitcoin is, it's easy to understand that the financial transaction laws and all other business, money transmitter license, and all that kind of stuff doesn't apply to Bitcoin or to Azteco. So with that in mind, and with the right legal advice and the right companies working with you, you can make the argument, and that's what we've done very successfully, otherwise we wouldn't be so widely distributed. You can make the argument that we're just the same as a gift card, and that's true. And anybody who has in their mind the word semantics as I make this explanation, which is a real world explanation that helps us to remain in business, this is not a game. This is not Bitcoin Twitter. This is not wordplay. I'm talking about the real world. I'm talking about the law as it is practiced in these different jurisdictions. And it's very important for us to follow the laws where we operate. That's why we won't operate in Nigeria if the climate there is too hostile for us and the authorities there are dead set against Bitcoin. There are many other places where we can operate, but we follow the law wherever we operate, and we make sure that we are legal in all the jurisdictions where we are operating. And thankfully, because the world is changing and the people who run these countries are changing along with it, because the geopolitical axis is splitting in two and everything else, it's going to be easier and easier for us to make these arguments about the populations of these countries being given access to a kind of money that's not under the control of a monopolar power. I think this is very important, and there are a lot of intelligent people running these countries who understand this. And I think that President Bukele is one of them who understands very clearly what Bitcoin actually represents to a sovereign nation and its people. And so, given that, access to Bitcoin for these people is very, very important. So if we're going to talk about these legal aspects, we need to talk about it from a slightly different point of view, not that we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing, or how we're, quote unquote, getting away with something. This is another phrase unintelligent people use. We're not getting away with anything. We are legally compliant and we obey the law. What we're doing is using our intelligence. We're using our intelligence. We're offering a product that's compelling, that anybody can understand the context of, and so we're allowed to operate. It really is as simple as that.
Okay, moving on. Hello, Mike. I've just started to get my feet wet with the syndicate. Congratulations, investing in Bitcoin companies. Could you please let us know how Azteco plans to manage their balance sheet? Are they on a Bitcoin standard? Do they save a percentage of their revenue or treasury in Bitcoin? I think that this is an important question that would be a great standard to have in all of your Q&As. That's actually a very good question. Yeah.
That is a very good question. Let's think about this. Now, when I originally wrote Azteco before Paul joined us, we were betting, I was betting, that the price of Bitcoin would continue to go up. And so we kept in the parlance of this person, the treasury, all in Bitcoin. Now, as you know, on this stock to flow model, which is actually correct in case anybody's wondering, there are occasions where the price of Bitcoin goes down. And we've just suffered a big one just now. So if we keep all of our working capital and everything else in Bitcoin, it would disrupt our ability to fulfill the vouchers and make good on the deposits that are given to us from our vendors. So what Paul actually came up with is, well, before I say that, we knew that we had to have a system of hedging, some kind of system of hedging where we are protected from Bitcoin volatility. And I don't mean the big crashes like we just had. I mean even the small week by week vituperations of the Bitcoin price on these exchanges. So we went to a couple of companies that have complex software to mitigate this. And we decided in the end, after Paul had a very, very hard think about it, to write our own bespoke hedging solution. And that hedging solution isolates us totally from Bitcoin's price going down. So we have managed to get through this recent dip in the price untouched, unscathed totally, because our proprietary system keeps us absolutely isolated away from the Bitcoin price, whilst allowing us to fulfill all the vouchers on demand. It includes having a float, having market surveillance and everything else. It's all very, very complicated, but it works. So in our method of of having Bitcoin as the means by which we keep our money is by selling it. It's counterintuitive, but that's the way it is. We have to have a system that protects us from the ups and downs of Bitcoin while selling Bitcoin, growing Azteco to the size of Uber and the size of Yahoo and those sorts of companies. And by doing that, increasing the value of the company, at which at some point in the future, then we can cash out into real money, which is Bitcoin. So while we're running this business, a business requirement is that we protect ourselves against the Bitcoin price with hedging, with a hedging tool. After we become huge, then we can have the luxury of keeping money in Bitcoin, either for ourselves, our staff, or whatever, in whatever way we want. But for now, we have to have this system so that we don't get wiped out and then there is no business. And that's the answer to that. Bitcoin is going to be the money of the world. Fiat is going to die. I am convinced of that. What nobody knows is the timeline when this event is going to happen. So between now and then, we have to survive. We have to use fiat on its terms. We have to use Bitcoin on its terms and use them together to spread Bitcoin to every corner of the world. That's going to help make this transformation to a Bitcoin-only world come to pass. And we have to do what we have to do to get there, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, so in closing, what are you most excited about for Azteco in the near future? Is there any particular partnerships, anything that you can let us know about that you might be the most excited about, integrations, etc.? And we're going to do a call to action also on if you are in the position to be a vendor. There are plenty of opportunities on this United States map. This is not the main market for Azteco. It is outside the United States. When you think about 200,000 outlets in South Africa or other countries, 30,000 or however many are coming online in Brazil here shortly. If you have a chain of stores, or if you want to onboard, you can either contact Azteco directly, depending on the size. And if you want to maybe mention BitRamp for any aspiring people. I mean, I can't believe that there's no vendors in Nevada, or in Las Vegas. Look at this. Albuquerque's wide open. Austin, which I don't understand because I believe Pleb Lab has a terminal. Maybe they've chosen to keep their pin off the map. I don't know how that works here. Atlanta, right? Tab Conference, very big Bitcoin scene, no one there. And if you're in sunny South Florida and on Miami Beach, you might want to pop into this taco place or call this individual here, wherever he may be. My wife will probably answer. My wife will probably answer the phone wherever she is. Where the heck is it? There it is. If you're in Miami Beach, you can call this right here, Unconfiscatable LLC, and see who answers the phone. So what you're excited about, and then what to do if you want to sign up as a merchant, if you have a string of retail stores or you want to get going, what should people do?
Well, first of all, let's do the second one first. If you want to become an Azteco vendor, you go onto our website, fill out the form, and our sales team will get in touch with you, and we'll see if you can work with us. And as for what I'm excited about, I am excited about South America. I'm very, very excited about South America. We have a large number of outlets that are in the process of being switched on. And the demographic there and the environment there is, for all intents and purposes, pro-Bitcoin. So with the demographic and the pro-Bitcoin, not hostile to Bitcoin atmosphere in these places, we're set to make a very large number of sales of vouchers. Brazil alone has a ridiculous number. And what's also interesting about two of these integrations, one for Colombia, is that in Colombia, I think there's 6 banks where you can go in and buy an Azteco voucher. So that is quite astonishing. And there's at least 2 banks in Brazil where you're going to be able to do it. And these banks have branches all over the country. So for the first time, for many of these people, they can get a voucher through an intermediary, through a retailer that is trusted because it's a bank. And so they'll know that's nothing fishy or anything else, and they're going to trust it, and they're going to use it. And once they use it once, they're going to get hooked on it, and then we're going to be selling them a lot of vouchers. That's what I'm super excited about. This South American set of integrations is one of the most powerful things we've ever done, because it involves banks and huge numbers of outlets. And also, it must be mentioned, is Canada. Canada is super interesting also, because the system is very, very fast. The population is prepped for Bitcoin. It's a super high educated population there, and the narrative is accepted. So we're going to sell a lot of vouchers there. So those are the things that I'm really, really excited about.
Okay. And if you are lucky enough or fortunate enough to be going to the upcoming Adopting Bitcoin conference later this year, November 15th through 17th. This is their 2nd annual Adopting Bitcoin. I went last year. It was an amazing conference, very affordable as well. It's surreal to be in El Salvador and see Bitcoin in the wild everywhere you go, whether it's paying for your Sheraton room or your meal or your pupusa or whatever you want to buy. It is great. You can have the opportunity to speak with this individual in person. He will be there. I'm very excited too, because he doesn't make many in-person appearances. So he'll be there speaking and hopefully bringing further adopting the hyper Bitcoinization in the country that is kind of on the tip of the spear, leading the charge in that. So I just want to say thank you for all this stuff. If you want to learn more, it's azte.co, and ltng.ventures is our group of amazing, accomplished people who try and support these charismatic founders and brilliant teams and amazing ideas. So thank you, Akin, for hanging out with me today.
It's a pleasure, Mike, always. And thank you for all you do with Lightning Ventures.
First of many times we hang out, for sure, because I definitely want to unpack a lot more of Bitcoin is not money, maybe at another time.
Anytime, any place.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.